Thank you so much for tuning in. You're listening to C Major Before the Show. I'm your host, C Major Porter. We are live here on the show, and it's Saturday here in the greater New York area. We're going to start off with doing a little bit of playing at the piano, and today's topic is about nail tips. So if you are a fan of nail salons, if you're a fan of wearing long nails, keep listening. We're at the piano and we're going to move to a different area very shortly, but I just wanted to start here first because I'm curious. I'm curious to know if you have a desire to play the piano, but you thought you couldn't play if you had long nails or if you chose to wear long nails. I think it's a choice here in the 21st century. And you're going to hear the microphone move away from me for just a moment because I want to play a few progressions just for you to listen to. And then just get your opinion. Do you think it would be possible to play something like that wearing long nails? So just listen. Open your minds, open your imaginations, open your creativity, and just think for a moment. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of things today. I'm going to show you chord progressions, and then over at the C Major Radio Show, we'll talk about what we've played, because there it gets a little bit more studious, a little bit more academic, and I'd like to tell you exactly what we were talking about and to give you some sort of dialogue to consider when you're having your conversations about music making over that cup of coffee or cup of tea that you enjoy. And just open up your minds with me for a moment. I'm going to play something else involving chords, and then I'm going to play a couple of scales, and then we'll go back to our other location. Okay, hang on a second. Here's the second chord progression. And the third. Let me start that again. Okay, so for me, I don't wear nail tips. So I am using the fingertips for my playing. I'm using the fingertip position or technique, if you want to say that. I'm not using a flat finger technique, which you could use if you were wearing long nails. And who knows, the sound may be a little bit more different for you. Now, I just tried a little bit flat, but because I don't wear nails, I don't get the full effect of that. I was thinking about purchasing some nail tips or even making my own nail tips. You remember when you were a kid and you couldn't afford nail tips, and so what did you do? You used to draw on paper, usually lined notebook paper, and you would draw the shape of the nails, and then you would take some glue, usually the glue that you use at school, either the glue stick or the glue that's in the bottle that you squeeze. And then, well, of course, you would color the nails the color that you want. Then you just stick those on and then pretend that you had long nails. So I was saying this to a student. I was telling her, maybe I should try to do that first, because do I really want to spend $9 on nail tips and not know if they're going to damage my nails when I stick them on? I just want to take the risk. I installed nail tips long ago, years and years ago, and I was very upset when I found out after removing the nails, there was a groove there on my nail that had to grow out first before it would disappear. So I don't want to go through that again. But anyway, I might decide to do like a paper nail test and just see what it feels like to be forced to keep my fingers flat and playing on the fleshy side of my fingers for these chord progressions. But there's something that you can do if you want to just see what it feels like to play the piano and play a scale. I think that you could do that even without using your thumbs. So then you're not really forced to use the fingertip position for playing a scale. You just keep your fingers flat. I believe this is what they did during box time before he started to write music that would include the thumb, I believe. So I have to do a little bit more research to find out when exactly that occurred in history. But some of the method books will show you this. They'll show you the positioning where you play basically using tetrachords. So you divide your regular 8-note major scale into 2 parts. So your left hand would use the little finger, the ring finger, the tall finger, and the pointer finger to play the first 4 notes. And then the same thing for the right hand, pointer finger, tall finger, ring finger, little finger, and leaving the thumbs out. So let's try that on a C major scale. So if I do that, I can keep my fingers flat. And I think it might be a better way for you to experience playing with nail tips. I just feel sorry for I just think there has to be millions of you out there that wear long nails that maybe think, oh, I will never play piano because I don't want to sacrifice damaging my nails or having to cut my nails low. I just don't want to do it. And even I've met, I don't say students, but I would say potential students who wear long nails, but because of their jobs, they had to cut those nails down. But to me, they're still long, so that if you tried to play the piano, you would just be hearing click, click, click on the keys. So something to think about. So I just played a C major scale using that fingering, using flat fingers, keeping my thumbs out. Now I'm going to try another one and say, why don't I try, let's see, a G major scale. Okay, now that one was a little bit tricky because you have to go up on the black key. You have to go up on the F sharp. So it almost forces that third finger to curve just a little bit. But I think you can still practice that flat finger technique. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in to the beginning of our podcast episode today. It's a very special podcast titled Something About Playing with Nails, but we're going to be talking about other things today too, because it's been a heavy week if you guys have been listening to the news and things that are going on. But we're going to try to lighten up your evening. It's a Saturday evening. We got a late start. I'll tell you why in just a moment, but just bear with me. So I played for you 1 chord progression, and what you're supposed to try to do is play this progression in all keys if you can. But I will give you the formula for that over at the C Major Radio Show. So keep listening. And then the chord study, I gave you 2 progressions. And then I wanted to see if you could transpose those by half steps to all keys. So it's the multi-key approach, really. It's saying don't be limited to just playing in 1 key. But we'll talk about that further. So thank you so much for tuning in again. And I'm going to be changing my location starting now. And once I get there, I'm going to start my recorded music. So you're going to hear that. So let me just get myself situated here. And as I move, I'm going to be talking with you to find out how your week went. How did your week go? How did your day go? Did you have a good week? Were you worried all week? Because as we know, we are in a global situation where everybody's worried about what's going to happen next. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. There are some concerns that affect me and what I'm doing with piano teaching. And there are some concerns that affect my friends. So my thoughts are with my friends this week and colleagues and friends and family. It's all coming together. But I'm glad you're able to be here today. So I'm back at my other location now. I have all of my books in front of me. I have my outline. And I think I said I was going to be using a tighter outline going forward. I'm still working on that, and I definitely have the resources in place to do that. And so just bear with me because today is a little bit different. We're speaking from the heart today, and we're just sharing with you some of our thoughts, things that are coming to mind, sharing with you some of our opinions. So please don't think that because we share our opinions here that you have to adopt those opinions for yourself. You may have your own opinion about things. And let me say this too. I think sometimes I have a tendency to sound like I'm judging, and I really want to apologize to anyone who's listened to the podcast who thinks, whoa, C Major's a little judgmental. It's not meant to be that. And the reason for the podcast was that things were happening to me that I just didn't understand. It felt like I just wasn't able to have those conversations that I wanted to have with my colleagues, and I wasn't able to have those conversations as well with students. And they were just thoughts that were just bubbling in my mind, and I thought, you know what, the best way to get this out is to have a podcast. So you are listening to C Major Before the Show. I'm C Major Porter. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, and we're back. I just needed to get a sip of orange juice. And I apologize if I sounded a little winded too, but because I was really eager to get up the stairs really quickly so I could play for you live and then talk with you at the same time. So I had a lot going on physically, and now I'm back, and now I'm sitting and I'm relaxed. But I wanted to have a sip of juice, and I may be taking a little sip of orange juice and eating some gluten-free pretzels throughout today's podcast because I haven't had my dinner yet. I've been trying to eat dinner a little bit earlier than normal for the past few weeks, and it really is changing. It's changing the way that I do things. It's a good routine, I think, to try to eat as early as possible. It's not quite the diet that Dr. Oz was talking about, where the one you fast for a certain period of time and then you try to stop eating at a certain time. It's not quite that, but I'm trying to make little improvements along the way. So I definitely have my mind on wellness here in 2020. Anyway, let's get to our outline because I want to know how you're feeling. I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling all right. And I know that you have some concerns about things that are happening globally. So today's episode is about tips on playing with nail tips. Did you ever think you'd see the day when piano students could play the piano well while wearing long nails? So we're talking about this and more on today's episode, and I'm so glad that you've tuned in. And then over at the C Major Radio Show, we'll share with you some of the things that we played earlier to talk about the theory, talk about chords, talk about pedagogy, and just explain a little bit more, just expand on today's topic. So I have some shout outs today, and I also want to go with you online as well. There were some resources that came to my attention this week that I think I should share with you if you are a professional musician, if music is your livelihood, if you are a piano teacher, a teaching artist, a professional pianist, or just a musician in general, and you live in the greater New York area, and you've made this your life's work. I'm sure you have some concerns at this time, so I'm glad to see that a lot of my friends are helping each other, supporting each other out there. It's a very trying time, I would say. I almost said fearful time, but I feel like it's a trying time. It's really trying your mind, your thoughts, trying your heart, trying your spirit, trying your talent in some cases. When somebody says, okay, you know what? We're going to cut down on our workforce and we'll help you as much as possible, but this is a human resources issue. And what can you do? What other things can you do outside of work? So a lot of issues are on the table. But thank you for listening. I want to give a shout out, first of all, to all of my students. I know you have some concerns about what's going on, all of the families. And this is just on behalf of the students and the families and some of my colleagues. I know you all have some concerns right now, and just know that my heart goes out to you, and you're definitely in my thoughts. You're definitely in my prayers, and we're all just thinking about you. So just know that. I think now is a good time to even see if you can make music. So you have the time off. Even see if you can find a way to be more creative during these difficult times. I think that some places around the world, they are doing that. They're expressing themselves musically and artistically. And so over at C Major's Classroom, we're going to post some things that we think may help with that creativity. So far, we've talked about what it means to play with nail tips and using no thumbs when you play. A little bit later, we'll talk about what it may mean to write music to a poem. What do you think about that idea? Let me know what you think. What do you think about trying to play Bach with long nails or pretend long nails if you go with the paper design I was talking about? And if you are a teacher, how do you respond to students that want to keep their nails long without judging them? You know, I think part of knowing how to respond to students is just by making them feel comfortable, not uncomfortable about their choice to wear long nails. I'm sure that they may get enough of that in their own family circles. If someone that supports the music making does not agree with that choice, but then you have others that are grown enough to make that choice. But again, how do you respond? Do you say, no, there's absolutely no way for you to play the piano with long nails, or do you support their choice to keep their nails long? I'm sure there's a ton of research for that. But anyway, I'm sending love to all of my students this week. I really am. I want you to know that you are very special, very dear to me. And I don't want to just keep saying I. We really, really treasure that you listen to the podcast and you get something out of the podcast. That's what our goal is, to try to help and give you something to think about, some food for thought. So speaking of which, there's a list. Now, I think what I'll do is just go over that list partially over here at CBTS, and then go over the other half over at CRS. Okay, so bear with me. I'm going to pull up my computer now. So if you keep up with our social media, you know that we posted a link, and I said that I would talk about that. So now let's see if I can get there live. And give me a moment to pull that up. And you are listening to C Major Before the Show, and we are live. We'll be back in a moment. just turn my music down for a moment. Thank you for coming back. And what I did was over at C Major before the show, I took a link that I found on social media somewhere else other than Facebook. And I said, we're going to talk about this list because I want to find out if these resources are helpful, if they're useful, if they really are live, if they're available. Because I think the right thing to do is to go to the CDC website, cdc.gov, I think it is, and to find out more there. But this was posted over on the same platform that we use for the classroom over at WordPress.com. And it's talking about COVID-19 and freelance artists. And then they give you some resources here. So I don't really know the person that posted this, and that's why I want to go over it with you now. But I just want to give you some words of encouragement. Don't panic. Really just think about what you can do to help yourself at this time. So if you have bills that are due, you're a freelance artist, the way that it is explained here. If you are an independent artist, a teaching artist, you're a nomad, whatever you want to call yourself, but you don't have a regular job or a regular full-time job, it's a very concerning time. So they say this list is not limited to, and then they give a list of people, but it's just free resources that somebody decided to compile, and hopefully it's reliable. So we're going to find a little bit about this now. So, they're just saying, don't go on there and start, doing things that go against the intention of the list. But maybe it's a starting place for someone. And so I think it may lead to a webinar of some sort, maybe starting next week. But just to give you an idea, they talk about emergency funding, international resources, best practices for online teaching. So I'm just going to click on a couple of these, and then I will save the rest for the C Major radio show, because even though we're going to be talking about writing down music over there today, I still want to just click on some things that I think will be pertinent to our discussion over there. Okay, so let's click on best practices for online teaching. Okay, so I see a lot of this type of chatter going on social media. Everybody's thinking, okay, you know what, I taught piano lessons in the studio. I used to travel to students, and now this may be an opportunity to move online. And I know a little something about that. From having the C Major team here to try to help get this podcast to a place of being really effective and helping learners that want to learn about piano online, and then actually experimenting with teaching online. It's not as easy as you think. So if you have been very effective in the classroom or the studio, just know that you're going to have to do some shifting, because you're going to find it's a totally different dynamic. But let's see. Let me click on this because, I tend to be biased when it comes to piano. But I like that there are resources for other professionals in the arts, such as dance. But prior to that, above that, they talk about distance learning. So that's what it used to be called. Online learning used to be called distance learning. And I remember that. I recall that a number of academic institutions and universities were using that. But not many people participated in that the way that they do now. And now it has a different name altogether, working remotely, learning remotely. And so let's see what it says here for resources for moving dance-based pedagogy online. So if you know anyone that needs this, you can go to dancestudiesassociation.org and look for that. We aim to strengthen the visibility, increase the reach of dances, and then they say what they're aiming to do, and then resources for moving dance-based pedagogy online. Just read what they have to say there. So again, I do not endorse any of this. I don't know how specific they are in terms of their resources and how well researched this is, but it seems to be legitimate to me. They have what appears to be a bibliography, so you can look there and just judge it for yourself. But it may be of some help. At least it will get the dialogue going. Okay, so now let's go back. I usually don't like to go back the way I just did, but let me just see if I can click on remote teaching resources and see what happens there. So let's click on that. And then I did read somebody's. It felt like it was more of a video blog where they said, okay, these are the different platforms you can use for teaching remotely, and this is what you're going to get in terms of how you use the microphone setup and how your students should use the microphone setup. So I know that's a concern too. If you are teaching remotely, how is the student going to be set up? Because that matters too, the connectivity of that. So are they going to be using headphones, headsets, earbuds? Are they going to be using their computer microphones? Like, how are you going to pick up the sound? How are you guys going to hear each other? You know, should you do it through Facebook? Should you do it through Skype? Should you do it through Zoom? Should you do it through something else? Which medium will you choose? Which platform will you choose? But if you click on this, remote teaching resources, basically it gives you a list of institutions that can maybe inform you of doing something like this. Universities, colleges, that sort of thing. So there's one heading that says ways to support student assignments during times of disruption. That's a nice way to put it. So I like that there's a response. And again, it seems like these are individuals who are really just trying to help by giving you links and giving you ideas. Online platforms, you may have heard of some of these: Twitch, Blue Jeans, Loom, Zoom. You know, some of these I have not checked out. Discord, there was somebody that showed a video of Discord and how to use that. And then, if you don't know, I am on Spreaker. I think that's a great platform for podcasting. Could it work also for remote piano lessons? That remains to be seen. This podcast is more about just having a dialogue with the listener and offering piano lessons on every podcast episode, but more in a conversational way, not just opening up a method book and just teaching what's in front of me. Although that could happen in the future. So then there are some other things that you can delve into in terms of health resources. Certainly something that we keep in mind as we talk about music making and wellness here in the podcast and over at the C Major Radio Show online. But take a look, see what you think. Go to C Major before the show, go to our homepage, and we're going to just minimize this right now because we're going to keep it up so that we can talk about it over at the C Major Radio Show. So let me say this to you. Be encouraged. So whether or not you have short nails, long nails, medium nails, It's possible for you to get into music making no matter the length of your nails. And I want to say that with some humor, so playing the laugh track as we speak. And also be encouraged on another topic. I don't know if I'm going to spend an episode talking about this, but it just came across my desk, came to my attention that there are some concerns out there by teachers who may be interested in teaching online. Which population of students will you try to reach out to? Will you reach out to students who can afford the lessons? Will you be charging for lessons online? Will the lessons be free? Or will you really try to use your professional platform to reach students that may want to study and they can't study? One interesting video that came across my desk on YouTube was the video of the old lady. You guys have probably seen this, where she's playing the piano in public. That's her choice. And she talks about how she wasn't able to play the piano until much later than she wished because her family could not afford the lessons. And so she just kept asking, and then one day somebody gave her that opportunity. But let me say this, I have some experience with that too, and it's, to me, if you go the socioeconomic route and you start to think about, okay, which population will I serve that may or may not be able to afford the lessons? In my experience, it has been over here more of a concern of convincing families that piano lessons may be a good idea for the student who seems to be interested in piano lessons, but sometimes families need to be convinced. That's been my experience over here, that you somehow have to sell them on the idea of, first of all, getting what the student needs to have the lessons. So there have been cases where the students may not even have a piano to begin with, but yet they're coming to lessons. And then maybe a month to maybe 6 weeks in, they finally get something to practice on. So my question to teachers that are thinking along the lines of which population of students will I be teaching, and for whatever reason it is, I would say think about what your vision is for your students, first of all, because sometimes your vision for what they will do is very different than what they will be able to do when you start to give them all this good information about how to play. And do a survey. I think I saw this online too, that somebody's creating a document to help you teach online, but I would just caution you to find out, first of all, who you're dealing with, and do they even have what they need to get started in the first place? Or are you willing to wait for them to get what they need? Do you think it's possible to teach somebody piano lessons without them having a piano? These are the kinds of things I've been trying to have a dialogue with, but I just haven't been able to seem to find someone to talk with them about these things. You know, it's always, it seems like it's always in their mind, their vision is, okay, I'm teaching piano lessons. And in their mind, the student already has the piano. The student already has the money to get the books. The student already has, everything they need to get started. But in my experience, that was not always the case. But we started anyway. Sometimes it can start with just a dialogue. Sometimes it can start with just something visual. I've had students where they literally take out a piece of paper and draw the keyboard enough to get started with a pentascale, or just sing the black and white key relationship, or something small. And then once they're able to do that on a tabletop, on something that they've actually drawn, it wasn't even anything fancy. Now I do know they make these flip out keyboards on cardboard paper that you can use on a tabletop, and that's around $3-4, something like that. So I even had a student that used that. Their family was willing to spend the money, but it was more that they wanted to wait and see if the student was going to respond well to the learning first. So then we had to still find out the learning style of the student. Was it more visual? Was it more auditory? Was it more kinesthetic? What were they willing to do? Why did they have the desire to do it in the first place? And could we really go forward with piano lessons after the 4th, the 5th, the 6th week of doing it away from a piano at their home, if that makes sense? So, of course, your studio is equipped with something if they're coming to you, but what do you do when they have nothing to practice on home? Also consider the home environment. What's the home environment like? Anyway, let's circle back. We're supposed to be talking about nail tips here on today's podcast, and that just brings me to the subject of beauty. I had students that really put beauty over functionality, if that makes any sense. And I'm not judging them. Please know that I'm not judging them. What I'm saying is that there may be an open door there if you just don't limit your potential nail-wearing students and find something for them to get into. And then I really strongly believe that once it becomes important to them, that they're willing to do certain things to improve their playing, that they will do those things without you even urging them. I love to see that. It's almost like, it's not even like a light bulb that comes on. It's more or less like an awakening, which I guess could be compared to more like a light that comes on, but it's more like the sun is rising and you can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their will, you can see it in their spirit, their personality, their attitude changes. It just evolves over time, and before you know it, they're making decisions that are good for their learning, or they have the support, they're no longer afraid. So I love to see that in the growth of a student. So okay, what else was on my list? Let me take another sip of orange juice and another bite of my pretzel, and I will be right back. You're listening to C Major Before the Show. C Major Porter, and just a few more items I wanted to go over on my list today before we go over to the C Major radio show. This is C Major Before the Show, and we try to warm you up to some of the things that we'll talk about over on that podcast. And so, just to give you an idea of what we'll do next week, we will be here next week. Next week will be the 21st. And I want to talk about chording along to recorded music. So still keeping in mind, you nail wearers out there, you nail tip wearers, playing with nails, kind of like running with scissors, right? Playing with nails. Really nail tips. You know, how do you do that on a piano? Chording along to recorded music. I'll decide what music that's going to be. I know you have to be very careful. It probably will be something original that's recorded because you have to be so careful nowadays with using other people's songs. Happy Pi Day, by the way. Let's give an applause for Pi Day. And you know pi is spelled P-I, right? We're talking about that number, 3.14. And you know, I did some food shopping today. I have to tell you this story. What they're saying on the news is so true. I mean, there really is no toilet paper on the shelves. Unbelievable. I went to 2 places. I went to a pharmacy and I went to a food market. No toilet paper. And so, you know, I'm into comedy as well. So I saw this one comedian talking about what his family used to do in the absence of toilet paper. So I guess in a way you have to be really resourceful or just think, oh, could I use this in lieu of? But that was stunning to me. 3 things that I noticed were completely wiped out off the shelves. The sanitizer wipes. There was 1 box of baby wipes left. And hardly any water. I saw this customer loading up their cart with at least 20 gallons of spring water. And then just went down each aisle and you could see things that were missing that really meant something. This one customer took the last 2 pounds of ground beef. Another customer, while I was in the store, mind you, and a whole shelf of my favorite breakfast cereal was gone, completely just wiped out. I don't think I've told you which cereal that is. I may tell you later, but I'm not going to tell you right now, but completely gone. Boxes of cereal. Parents urging their kids that are going to be out of school for 2 weeks until further notice to get the biggest box of Goldfish crackers. You know the ones I'm talking about. The kid was used to getting the small bag, and the parents said, no, get the whole box. I mean, that's the times we're living in. Anyway, happy Pi Day. So I brought that up because I thought about what I thought I saw was a special in the supermarket paper, that they were going to take off the number pi from the price of the food item I was interested in. And then when I got there, it wasn't even that number. It's like $2.88 is not the same as $3.14. But anyway, just remember, music, math, and coffee go together. So, just a little humor for you. For a fun music exercise, see us over at C Major's Classroom this weekend. We're going to urge you to write a love song. Keep love in the air if you can. If you can't write about love, write about your heartbreak. Write about wonder. And so I'm going to give you some words to inspire you over at the classroom. I recently was able to pick up this book that talks about love, and I'm excited about it. It talks about the evolution of love. It talks about, passion and things like that. So I'm not sure what I will post yet, but I'm going to post something and just see if you can put your own music making to it. On this podcast, we have talked about, over the other podcasts too, we've talked about chords, putting chords to use. Now's the time to open up your creativity, see what you can do, either at the piano or away from the piano, and have fun with it. It should be a fun music exercise, so look for that. We'll also try to post something about the things we talked about earlier at the top of the podcast episode about how to use your long nails at the piano. So it would be a combination of fun things for you to consider. In the words of this sign I saw while I was out and about, wash your hands, use common sense, stay calm. I'll add to that, be well. We have a shout out to the legend himself, Quincy Jones, I believe turned 87 this weekend. So happy birthday and shout out. To Q. I think we mentioned him on the last podcast episode because he was in my music dictionary that I have. And I didn't even look at the date. I just saw the name, but I probably should have looked at the date and to see what they wrote about him as well. But we'll do that at another time. If I have a chance, I'll post that over at C Major's Classroom. But showing much respect to a well-loved genius in the music industry. And so I'd like to leave you with some humor today. We talked about a book that I listed over at C Major's Classroom. And since you're going to be in, because we are under a global situation where a lot of people are staying in, under humor in this book, they list the movies. So since you're probably going to be taking advantage of Netflix, and then I heard that Disney is putting out on Disney Plus Frozen 2 3 months early. So I know the parents will be happy about that. But if you're into comedies, and I was saying this on the last episode that I might have had a different pick of movies. Anchorman, Best in Show, Bridesmaids, Superbad. There's Something About Mary, Beautiful Girls, just to name a few. There's more on the list. I will not be listing this, by the way, over at C Major's Classroom, but I thought I would just mention it here just to give you something to think about, lighten your mood a little bit, laugh a little bit. I mean, there's some good humor online as well. I think somebody was saying that the new currency now is toilet paper. That who would think you could buy a cup of coffee with a roll of toilet paper now because we're in shortage. I have to laugh about that. Be well. See us over at the C Major Radio Show. We're going to be there a little bit later, probably in the next 15 minutes or so. But we just need to gather ourselves for a moment and then make our way over there. I'm so glad you tuned in today. I hope you got something out of today's podcast. We really aim for that. It's not about us. It's not about any one person here. It's about you and your learning and what you can do to make the best music you can make. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll see you next week right here on C Major Before the Show.